Well, friends, good morning and happy Monday to you. The Monday morning quarterback, here we are. Beautiful day in the township, as always. The weather report, 70 and sunny. I hope where you are, it's as beautiful as it is here. As always, yesterday we had a wonderful worship service around here. I just really appreciated and enjoyed all our folks. And if you have not yet worshiped with us, I'd like to encourage you to go and worship and then return to this video. If you did, whether you were in person or online, Bible. For me, coffee, it's not even 9:30 yet. So coffee, I'm still working on that, and journal, and let's get started. Boy, I really had to put into practice one of my points from yesterday when we were talking about where Peter says you must respect everyone. Amy Jo and I were leaving Culver's, which is going to be the death of me. I just love that place. And we were eating our concrete mixer, which is like a custard. And so, in a parking lot, you go counterclockwise to the right. So if you approach a traffic circle, which way are you going to go? You're going to go right, of course. And so in a parking lot, the same holds true. So we were in our space, got out and turned as if we were going to continue to go counterclockwise. A guy came in the wrong direction. And I was going very slow. I'm a slow driver. And just happened to look up at him, and he looked down at me and said, "You're a real dumb A." And I was like, what did I do? Now, there was a part of me that wanted to fire back something to him. There was a part of me that wanted to throw my custard at him. There was a part of me that wanted to circle back and say, let's have a conversation about that. But then I remembered what Peter said, and I just looked at him and smiled and nodded and drove on. Don't always do the right thing. So anyway, but can you believe that? People are so angry. And we talked about that in our sermon yesterday. Have you experienced that? I had some folks come up to me afterward. In fact, people make an appointment with me to talk about how what they're seeing in their family, it was encapsulated in that rise of global unhappiness. And it's so true. We are just living in a time when people are just on edge, they're angry, they're sad, they're physically in pain, they're stressed, they're worried. I mean, you name it, that's what's going on. And how do we, as followers of Jesus Christ, live distinct lifestyles that point them to God? And that's what Peter's talking about in the sermon that we looked at yesterday. So if you got your Bible, let's go to 1 Peter chapter 2. Verses 11 and 12 is where we will start, and there's a lot here. So as we get started, let's bear this in mind. Peter is talking about difficult and challenging relationships. And we're going to look at one relationship today, and that is the relationship between the Christian and authority. Then next week, we're going to look at two relationships. And it's kind of funny how they go together. The first had to do with slavery, and of course, we're going to move that into the 21st century. But we're going to look at slavery and marriage. So do with that what you will. But that's where we're going to go next week. All right, if you would, go ahead and read 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 11 and 12. Pause the computer and then get back with me. All right, come back. Interesting stuff here. Dear friends, I urge you, and he uses aliens and strangers. So prior to this, they were exiles who were scattered. And I think there's a little different nuance in aliens and strangers on the earth. So he's not just talking about the locale where they are. He's talking about the fact that this planet is not our forever home. This planet is a place where we are for a period of time, but we're not here forever. And I think that's really important to understand. When you and I endure difficult times, I'm not here forever. When we have people call us names like you're a real dumb you-know-what in a Culver's parking lot, we're not here forever. This earth is not our forever home. And he just reminds them of that. And then I circled in the 11 o'clock service the words good lives. Live such good lives. What is the good life? I was thinking about the old, I think it's Sinatra, oh, the good life. And just kind of carefree and happy-go-lucky. That's not what he's talking about, the good life here. So when you're thinking about your good life, and I'm thinking about my good life, I am thinking maybe travel and good food and being with the people I love and my sports teams winning, which would be for a change this year. It's not been a good year for my Steelers. That's not what he means. He contrasts it with among the pagans so that though they may accuse you of wrong, so the good life is in contrast to doing what is wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us. It is aligned with good deeds. So what is the good life in Peter's mind as he's communicating to you and me? It's when we recognize what is wrong around us and we do not participate in that or do that. And when we have opportunity, we do good deeds. And so he's saying that's what you need to do as you live among the pagans. Who are the pagans? Remember we talked about it yesterday. The pagans, that's not the nickname of a sports team. We don't root for the Cleveland Pagans, although sometimes they play like pagans. It's not a nationality, it's not an ethnic group, it's not a religion. It's merely people who are not a part of the Christian community in this context, or a part of the Hebrew community. Old Testament, the pagans, non-Jews. New Testament, the pagans, non-Hebrew or Christian, non-Jew or Christian. So you and I think we can take something from that. We're not on this earth forever, and we're going to live our lives among people who might not share our same views when it comes to the person of Jesus Christ. They are pagans. We're going to live our lives among them. What is the object here? Look at the very end of verse 12. That they may, I'm going to circle it, glorify God. How are they going to glorify God? When they see your life and when they see my life. Do you see that? I underlined see twice. Not that they may hear or be preached to or convinced in any, no, that they see the way we live. That we're living good lives, we are doing good deeds, and we are avoiding doing what is wrong. That's what God is saying to you and me. What is his desire for how we're going to live our lives in this culture that might not be so friendly to us? First and foremost, we're going to live a good life in front of people so that they can see. We don't have to tell them what we're doing. Remember we said yesterday that character is revealed and observed. It is not verbally communicated. Someone cannot say to you, I have integrity, and you think, okay, they've got integrity. How do you know that person has integrity? You watch. And you observe, and you see it. All right, let's keep moving on. Verses 13 and 14, again, now this one is just chock full again. The first two screens I thought were really just packed with information. So go ahead now and give verses 13 and 14 a quick read, and maybe make some notes, and then come back to me. So go ahead and stop the video now. Here we go, start me back up. Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every authority instituted among humans. I started with the word submit. And we went a couple of directions yesterday, and let's revisit that. First of all, we don't like the sound of the word submit because it sounds weak. Why am I going to submit to you? That means that you are stronger than me. That's not true. That's like saying that meekness is equated with weakness. That's not true. Meekness is strength under control. Gentleness is power under control. It's not weakness. And so when he says submit, that means we choose to submit ourselves. And again, that sounds counter to what we tend to want to do because we want to make things about us. You know, I want my way. What about my needs? What about my rights? He says, no, submit yourselves. And I noted yesterday that this goes all the way back to his understanding of humanity because he saw it in his own life. You know, from the very beginning, Adam and Eve in the garden, what happens? They rebelled. We just had a little technical glitch, so I'm restarting. But, you know, in the garden, what happens? Adam and Eve, they rebel against God, the opposite of submit. In fact, take a quick look with me. Move over to verses 21 through 23 of 1 Peter chapter 2. Talking about who Jesus Christ is. So Peter's thinking about Jesus as he is writing these words. What did Jesus do in relation to the authorities here? Because he suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. Great advice for all of us, great counsel for all of us. We follow in his steps. When they hurled insults at him, he didn't retaliate. When they called him a dumb you-know-what in the parking lot, he didn't retaliate. I gotta learn to be better about that. It's a process, isn't it? He didn't retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. So we have this example of Jesus submitting to authority. So we're going to submit, that's what Peter says. Why? For the Lord's sake. Not for our sake, but for God's sake. Who are we submitting to? Every authority instituted among the humans. Just think about human institutions. So I sat down and tried to think of what are some of the institutions that I submit to. Obviously, I submit to the government. I pay my taxes. I submit to them when it comes to the laws. You know, if I'm driving 70 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone and I get a ticket, I've done wrong. I deserve that ticket. So we submit to that. We do that every single day. He then spells out for them some specifics about who they are to obey. And he begins with the king. Do you see that in verses 13 and 14? Submit to the king. And we pointed out yesterday that had to be difficult for him to write because the king in his day would be Nero, who, as I mentioned, persecuted the Christians. And if you didn't catch it yesterday, personally, Nero was he was a complete reprobate. And in order to attain and maintain power, he had his stepfather murdered. His mother kind of conned Claudius, the emperor, into marriage. So he had him murdered. He liked to poison people. You know, anytime you see a leader with a lot of people dying around him or her, that's a red flag. He ended up marrying his stepsister. Eventually he had her killed, poisoned. He then had his younger stepbrother, who would ascend to the throne, killed. And even his mom, who he had conspired with all these years, he had her killed. Not a nice guy. Peter is saying, you're going to submit to him. And so for me, I start thinking, when do I say no? You know, when do I submit and when do I not? That's an interesting thing for you to process as well. And in my mind, I'm going to submit unless I am demanded to do something that is counter to what I believe to be true and right and faithful. Peter, for example, I don't know did I do this yesterday? Did I talk about Peter in the Sanhedrin? I think I might have at 11 o'clock. So in the book of Acts, the Sanhedrin, which is a Supreme Court equivalent in Peter's day, says, no more preaching the gospel. And Peter, of course, had been commissioned by Jesus to go into the world and preach the gospel and make disciples. What did he do? He obeyed Jesus Christ. He did not obey the authorities. And so we have to make our choice. But as a rule, and for me, as a rule, I process this as there are things I don't want to do and times I don't want to submit because I think it's inconvenient or I just think it's kind of silly. I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. Only when it runs counter to my faith, only then will I not submit. And I toyed with this idea yesterday, but I didn't mention it, but I will now. There was a time when it looked like the authority that was around us, government, was going to say, you cannot open this building and have people in here for worship. You cannot preach the gospel from this building, period. You can't be in here, period, to me as a pastor. And had that gone down, which it almost did, and it still could someday, I would have been here. I would have said that's counter to what God has commissioned me to do. That's counter to his call. And he is my ultimate authority. But whenever they said you need to wear a mask, I wore a mask. Didn't want to, did. Because it was good for my health and good for the health of the people around me. So you see that it's kind of an interesting balance, isn't it? Peter's saying, how can you be such a witness for God that you glorify him when people see your actions? And of course, I thought about the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King Jr. and the movement he led, so aligned with what Jesus was written about in this same chapter we just read. Didn't retaliate, hurled insults, suffered, all that. Great rule of thumb for you and me to think about. And then finally, let's do one more together. Let's do verses 16 and 17. So if you would stop the video and read that and then rejoin me. Start me back up. What does submission look like? He's going to give us some information here. Live as free people, but do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as servants of God. And I circled free and servant. We are both free people, but we are also servants, and we cannot forget that. Yes, we are set free. Our sins are forgiven. We have God's grace. We're going to be with Him eternally. We are still His servants, and we are still called to not use our freedom as a cover-up for evil. If you want to stop the video now and maybe make some notes or just ponder that, are there moments in your life when maybe you use that great freedom we have as a cover for doing some things that are not so good? I mean, I'm going to be forgiven anyway. What the heck? I think a lot of us do. We become critical or judgmental or self-righteous or self-centered. We say, I discern something in you. We're not called to do that. We're not called to use our freedom as a cover for that kind of evil. Not at all. And then he gives us an outline. What are we going to do? Show proper respect to everyone. There you go. Respect. Just somebody says something you don't like, somebody says something offensive, I'm going to respect them. It's okay. I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. I don't have to be right all the time. He goes on, love the family of believers. We're going to love one another. And we do that as a church. And then he has God and the king. We're going to honor the king right here. We show the proper respect. We stand when the judge walks in the courtroom. But we're going to fear God. We're going to revere and stand in awe before God. That's a big difference. Who is the ultimate authority? The one we show honor to, or the one we revere? And I think that answers our question. And so just some things to process. As you think about your relationship with the authority around you, we're going to show respect to everyone. We're going to love one another in the body. We're going to honor the people who are in authority, but we're going to ultimately revere God. There you go. The Monday morning quarterback with one interruption. It's been a long one. Can't wait for next week. So we will finish. I was going to do verses 18 and 19 yesterday. Ran out of time, ran out of gas. So we'll do verses 18 and 19, and then we'll move into chapter 3. So you have a great day. Can't wait to see you Sunday or know you're with me online. You take care, and bye.